What's up, guitar players? Today we're going to go through a really simple way to, bring in flourishes, pro-sounding flourishes into your guitar playing. I always associate this skill with, Hendrix style flavors. You can hear these kinds of things all over his various tunes. If you listen to Bold as Love, for example, you hear a bunch of this stuff in the background. It's happening all over the place in Little Wing. And we're basically going to break down a little chord progression so you can, add these skills to your arsenal and then bring them into the various songs that you might be writing or the songs that you might be covering and learning, and you want to put your own spin on it and put your own flavor on it. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. And if you do find this helpful, of course, make sure to like and subscribe. That's very helpful to me and will allow me to keep doing these things. All right, so we're going to start with a G chord, and it's going to be, based on this large bar chord. But we're just going to play these three strings, the D, the G, and the B string. Right, so same notes here. We're just taking the D, the G, and the B. 5, 4, and 3. So we're going to hit that twice. And that's going to lead us into our first set of flourishes surrounding this shape. All right, excuse the guitar faces. All right, so we're going to go 1, 2. And so we're going to take those top 4 strings, right, D through the high E, and we're going to hammer while we strum these top 2 strings, the B and the high E. We're going to hammer and pull on the 5th fret of the B string. And then we're going to land with our ring finger on the 5th fret of the G string. Same thing, that hammer and pull is going to be a big component here. So we're taking, middle finger on the 4th fret of the G, hammering and pulling on the 5th fret of the G, hitting the 5th fret of the D string, and then back to the 4th fret of the G, maintaining that shape. So we're going to go. All right, so it's based around this triad. But the larger chord shape would be here. But that just frees up our fingers to make some more moves. All right. Then we're going to go to this C shape. All right. So instead of this bar chord, we're just taking these 3 notes. All right. We're also going to hit that twice. There's the C shape flourishes put together. Right, there's a rhythm to that hammer and pull. I'm pausing briefly. I'm taking some beats before, I start the actual hammer and pull. Just pay attention to that. All right, so same thing, hammer and pull as we hit the G and the B. So I'm hammering and pulling with my ring finger from the 5th fret of the G to the 7th fret of the G, landing on the string below. So that's the 7th fret of the D string. We just move that same pattern to the D string. And then we just give a little extra downstroke on the 5th fret of the D and the G string. So, we do that on the G string, 5 hammer pull from 7. Then D string 5, hammer pull on 7, and then going to these 5th fret on the D and the G string. Right, so landing on the string below with the ring finger, landing on the string below with the ring finger, and then hitting those 2 strings. Then we're going to move up to the D, right? So this D shape here, instead of again, here, we're going to move up to just barring with our index fingers. And it basically follows the chord progression of G, C, D, back to G. But it makes it so much more interesting because you've now got these flourishes. So you can, use this as an accompanying kind of skill if you're in a jam, or if you are playing alone and maybe you have a break, you're singing to a group of people and you have a break. You don't necessarily have to try to do a solo. You can just add these flourishes and make the chord sound so much more interesting, and it can kind of replace a solo and kind of create a lead flavor without having to solo without backing, chords and getting lost. So to get back to things, we're hitting that D shape twice to kind of keep that same rhythm that we're hitting on the front end of each shape. Flourish, 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 flourish. All right, so D twice. And there's the flourish on the D shape. And the reason this works really well, I think when you're here, you can see that we keep this shape and we're able to flourish onto these, different notes because they're all inside of the G major shape and the G major scale. Similarly, when we're flourishing in these shapes, they do maintain their integrity inside of the G major shape or G major scale shapes, but they also work on top of the, C major and D major respectively. All right, so if you think about C major down here, and you think about the C major pentatonic, also known as the A minor pentatonic, right? Relative majors and minors. All right, so same thing for D, obviously. But this note right here, right, this shape, that's a triad, that's a D triad, because if we move this, root note, up here it's the 3, which is also present in this small bar. So it works on a lot of levels. So back to the D. Right, we're starting with this lower, lower register hammer and pull. Or excuse me, it's just the hammer on. Right, so 7, 7, hammering to 9. Hammer on to 9. Same kind of flavor that we've been, using in the previous shapes. 7, hammer on to 9 while we're hitting 2 strings. Right? And then we're doing that again. But instead of getting the hammer and pull, we're hammering on, releasing without the pull, and that's the end of the flourish. And then we're going to hit the G up here, which, if you want to think about triads, would be an extension of this kind of C shape, right? If you think about the open C chord and you move it up to the 10th fret, that's a G. So we're just going to hit these notes right here, the D, the G, and the B string of that shape, 9, 7, 8. Just like the other shapes, we're going to hit that twice. And there's the flourish on the back end. So take these 2 strings, the G and the B of that shape, 7 and 8 respectively. 7 on the G, 8 on the B. And then we're going to do that hammer and pull onto the 9th fret of the G. Right? Ring finger hits the note on the D string, right? The lower note. Then same thing here, 7 and 7, hammer and pull on the 9th fret. Except now the lower note isn't our ring finger, it's our pinky, maintaining that G shape. All right? And then we hit the 7 and 7 on the D and G string, and then we can restart, all right? Back to that initial shape. And I think if you play through this for 5 minutes, and we'll play it, in one kind of motion in just a second, but I think if you play through this for just 3 to 5 minutes on the front end of your sessions, you'll get in some great, skill work, some great practice work, and this will, be that much more accessible when maybe you are learning some Hendrix songs, or, anyone who takes heavily from Hendrix, whether that's more bluesy guys like, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, or it's, people like, John Mayer and, oh God, who doesn't take from Hendrix, right? Let's just leave it there, John Frusciante, things like that. Everyone is using these skills That's why I say it's kind of a pro level skill, but it's a really relatively simple and can make you sound great. So let's play through this in one fluid manner a few times through, and then you'll have it for yourself. And like I said, if you find it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe because that's helpful for me. And my last thing is that, play this with the metronome, and I think it'll be that much easier for you to stay in rhythm, of course, and you want that skill at the ready. So anyways, I'm gonna play this with a metronome. You'll hear it, and then you'll be able to use it on your own. There is a PDF, as I probably already told you, and some sort of animation to download for yourself, and you can have this for all time. All right, let's jump into it.